So his grandfather was a very well-known chiropractor in Canada in the late 19th century. And chiropractors were actually like held at high regard as healers in the community, and it was a really good job to have. If you went to school for chiropractor, you're only working on like people who could afford such practices, and you're you're doing a good job. You're an MD. And so, but his grandfather actually started to get involved in the technocratic movement, and the technocracy regime was a part of this, like half of a secret society, half of like a business clan that was starting to get fueled up in the late 19th century in America. Well, he was a big proponent in the Canadian technocrats. Well, what happened is they actually riled up against the local government, the technocrats did, and he actually got kicked out. He got imprisoned and kicked out of Canada.
Hmm.
And he had a bunch of money. And so he told his wife, he said, "Hey, babe, I'm a vigilante, baby. I'm kicked out of Canada. You want to take this personal plane and fly around the world and see the seven wonders?" She's like, "Of course I do. I love you. Let's do it." So they got in their little plane and they started to fly around the world. Through there, they met the right people that they needed to meet. Some of them being the John D. Rockefeller when they were starting the Standard Oil Company um, in the earliest of the 20th century. John D. Rockefeller and Henry Flagler, who you just say that name a lot of times, people are like, ears up, radars up.
Mm-hmm.
But I can give you the history on John D. Rockefeller as well, and the Standard Oil Company, but we won't get into that right now. But they were friends with them, and which meant that the business that they started, when they landed their final trip, they landed their home in South Africa, where they got into the mining industry, mining minerals in South Africa in the early 20th century. So when you're friends with John D. Rockefeller and these different other miners who run the oil business, and you're mining rare and special minerals, you're a good person to have in the back pocket there.
Mm-hmm.
So Elon Musk's mother, is born in South Africa, and she's beautiful. She's been a model. She was hanging out with Charles Manson, and she was in the original Charles Manson Helter Skelter book before they took her image out. She was hanging out in Laurel Canyon with Bob Dylan and The Doors, Jim Morrison. Like, Laurel Canyon was popping off right at Mae Musk, and her popularity and fame started to grow, and she became a model and so on and so forth. She then married another guy from South Africa whose family comes from mining. So both of Elon Musk's parents come from South African mining families.
Mm-hmm. Deep
Money, all puns intended. That money runs deep, brother.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at companies like Tesla, and how we're getting lithium and things to make these very specific, high technologically advanced systems. Well, it all pays homage back to the ancient mining roots that comes from that. So the access to these minerals and lifelong access to big deep pockets of money. And so I think a lot of what we experience in the societal simulation is a lot of it's like kind of like planned out, in the sense that hey, because things take a long time to put into place when we're talking about big, huge scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the plan to make oil obsolete has been a plan for over 50 years at the minimum. But you need a way for the families that have this money, the families that have access to all of these fortunes and these operations. It takes time for them to be like, no, we're going to go oil obsolete, but we need to make sure all of our finances are set straight ahead of time, and
we need to convince the public. We need to, basically create the
create the story of how it happens, you know. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I'm with you. It's very easy to see with a little bit of history, to see behind the curtains, you know, to like see like, oh, okay, so he's actually just a pawn and like he's made to be loved by these people and blah, blah. It's frustrating, man, because I feel like it's impossible to look. I mean, you don't have to look that deeply nowadays into much to find like, oh, I tripped over a giant cable that they just they put a rug over it. And and you like think, I feel like, you know, if I was a young person, if I was discovering all this stuff when I was like 15 or 16, I feel like I would just be, you know, on the streets like, you know, like in catching things on fire. I don't know. It's I don't know, dude. Like the older I get, the more you discover all these structures that are clearly like all just. I don't know that our input really even matters. I don't know that like we think that. I mean, I don't mean to sound that so nihilistic. I understand that sounds so nihilistic, but I'm just saying like. Sometimes we think we discover these things and it's like a smoking gun, and I feel that way often, but it's almost like I don't know how else it's gonna be. Like I don't know. Like our story is so entrenched in itself. Like the truth is so far from how we see reality that I don't even know if like trying to backtrack and get back to capital T truth and what's right is like even gonna put us where we think it will. I mean, I don't know, man.